Hey guys, got plenty of books to get through that I read in the month of September. How is September over already? Anyway, as usual, going from least favorite to favorite, I did read one row book last month, and it was Your Heart is a Muscle the Size of a Fist by Sunil Yapa. This was a pick for the Anna and Eric book club, but it's been on my list for a while because one of my best friends recommended it to me. I disliked almost every page. Let's start with the basics. This takes place over the course of a single day in Seattle in 1999 during the World Trade Organization protests. Thousands of activists essentially closed down major streets in Seattle so that trade meetings had to be postponed or canceled. And this was to protest the poverty and corruption and lopsided power that was being caused by trade deals that were favorable to countries like the US. And this is told from several perspectives of protesters, police officers, and a political delegate. Yapa takes a gamble with his writing. He goes all in with a purposefully overwritten, overwrought style to catch you up in the drama. He's banking on you being swept away, and it's almost like he wants you to crowd surf on his style. That's a gamble that didn't pay off for me at all. I just felt jerked around. And I also think that Yapa was trying way too hard to express basic things. There was a moment when he was like, the unremembering, the forgetting. And I was like, who would have been confused just by the word forgetting? And there's another moment when he uses the word insight, and then he breaks away from the narrative to define it in a really histrionic way before jumping back to the story. And I was like, God, we all know what insight means. Like, your definition wasn't necessary or insightful. He also got caught up in the things he was exploring, whether or not we have responsibilities to people on the other side of the globe, how becoming part of something bigger than yourself can inspire and empower you, how the police can abuse their authority through fear and prejudice. But Yapa loved his own ideas so much that he held onto them for paragraphs and pages. Long after he'd said something interesting, he just kept restating ideas without developing them. This book really gives you the goldfish treatment. The characters are empty. There was only one that I occasionally cared about, the political delegate. We are given the same drawn-out descriptions of things through the eyes of different characters. So you get like 100 descriptions of tear gas, and the 100th doesn't capture anything that the first didn't. There were laughably forced flashbacks. Like, I just thought this was a really poor book. The main positive is that there were some descriptions of police brutality that were really powerful and sickening. And I had never heard of the World Trade Organization protests, and I'm really glad that I know about them now. So yeah, not my book, but I'm excited to hear what Anna and Eric are going to say about it because I know they're going to have very different perspectives. But that was the only dud of the month. I enjoyed everything else I read. So the next one to mention is the novel Dogs at the Perimeter by Madeleine Thien. This is her second novel, the one that preceded Do Not Say We Have Nothing, but it's only being published in the US this month for the first time. It's about the trauma of the Cambodian genocide, and I did a full written review on it that's linked down below for Open Letters Monthly. But I much preferred the other Madeleine Thien novel I read last month, which was her debut, Certainty. This was my first ever buddy read. I did it with Molly de Montaigne. I won't talk too much about this one because now I've read almost all of Thien's books, so I'm just going to finish them out and do an author spotlight on her sometime. But this is a novel of interwoven stories. We start with a Canadian man named Ansel, whose girlfriend, Gail, has just died. She was 39. It was unexpected. They'd been together for a decade. And so now Ansel's still in that stage where his life is separated into two parts. The one half is his real life, and the other half is his imagined life, where he still has conversations and interactions with Gail. But the novel really centers on the story of Gail's father and his best friend, who grew up during the Japanese occupation of North Borneo, which eventually became part of Malaysia. We jump around to a ton of different countries, we slide from the past to the present and back again, we move from character to character, and it all gets to be a little much. I love Thien's writing, and the ideas in here are really lovely about how memories and people stay with us, and how we crave security when that's the one thing that the world can never offer us. It's all a bit flat though, because Thien's not great with characters Most of them have very little personality. But the thing that makes this book special is the Ansel and Gail storyline. It's one of the best portraits of grief I've ever read. And often when I read about grief, all I feel is numbness. But this story is so understated and made me ache in a deep, vulnerable part of myself. So I honestly think it's worth reading just for those sections. Next is the Booker longlisted novel Home Fire by Kamila Shamsie. This is a modern retelling of the play Antigone by Sophocles, one of the 3 great ancient Greek playwrights. I'm going to do a full review on this one, and I don't think it's going to get a lot of views because this hasn't been big on BookTube and it didn't make the Booker shortlist, but I'm so excited to make this particular review because Antigone is one of my favorite plays and I love the way Shamsie adapted it. Then there's a middle grade book called The Wolf Wilder by Katherine Rundell. I did a joint review of this and 2 other books, so that's linked down below if you're interested. Up next is the novel Rush-O by Shirley Barrett. I picked this up on a whim because I was in the mood for something light. I'd heard of this book because it was longlisted for the Bailey's Prize a few years ago, and it was a good choice because it's super charming, although not as light as I originally thought. This follows an Australian woman named Mary who's looking back on the most significant year of her life, 1908, when she was 19 and her family made their money through whaling. It's Moby Dick light with Jane Austen vibes. Now, the whaling descriptions are a weird combination of gruesome and whimsical, but Barrett got all the whaling details, including the cute ones, from historical research, and she provides you with some of those excerpts at the end of the book. Mary is a great narrator. She's smart and funny, but unintentionally funny. There's this wonderful paradox where Mary herself is incredibly self-conscious, but the book itself is not. And all the moments that are endearing or make you laugh don't feel calculated because they're coming from this earnest and naive girl. Part of the book is her falling for one of the new crew members, and the descriptions of her awkwardness are so painfully real. Like, they took me back to places that I didn't want to revisit. And beneath this buoyant book are several mournful undercurrents. There's a subtle grieving for the possibilities of the past and for the life her family led before whaling became obsolete. So I absolutely recommend this one. Next is Autumn by Ali Smith. This is shortlisted for this year's Booker Prize, and I did a full review on it that's linked down below. Into my upper echelon for the month, we have the Oedipus Cycle, or the Theban plays, which are Oedipus Rex, Oedipus Colonus, and Antigone, all written by Sophocles, we think, between 441 and 405 BC. These translations are by Paul Roche. Oedipus Rex and Antigone were rereads for me, but Oedipus Colonus was new and such a surprise. I'm not going to talk about Antigone here because I'm going to discuss it in my review of Home Fire. And originally I was going to talk about the other 2 in this wrap-up, but I have way too much to say. It would have taken up more than half of the time. So stay tuned for my thoughts on these. There will be a dramatic reading of the biggest smackdown of a speech I've ever read, and the possible birth of a new series called Sophocles for Children. And my favorite books of the month were Ship of Magic and The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. These are the first 2 in a trilogy called The Live Ship Traders. That's the second trilogy in her giant Realm of the Elderlings series. These are both 900-page beasts. And oh my god, are they so much better than the Farseer books. And it's funny because on the back of one of these, George R.R. Martin has a blurb that says, "They're even better than the Farseer books. I didn't think that was possible." I'm like, come on, George. Like, the Farseer trilogy is light, but it's not spectacular fantasy and not in the same class as these. This trilogy takes place in a loose collection of islands called the Cursed Shores, and we follow a family named the Vestrits that's about to awaken their live ship. The Vestrits are an old trader family in a port called Bangtown, and a few generations ago, some of these trader families went into massive debt to commission live ships. They're ships made of special wood, and after members of 3 generations of the family have died on board, the figurehead comes to life. This trilogy is told in third-person perspective from a bunch of different characters, both in and outside the Vestrit family, both at sea and on shore. And as a general rule, I'm not into pirate stories. I have some kind of PTSD from the True Adventures of Charlotte Doyle, but it's the characters that make these books. I'd been reading through the Booker list when I started Ship of Magic, and I was like, oh yeah, character development is really nice. It's wonderful to feel like characters are real people and to care what happens to them. And that was the strength of the Farseer trilogy too, but the connection I feel like in these books just can't even be compared. And that's helped along by the fact that the details and politics of this world are so engrossing, the plot clips along, a ton of dramatic things happen, and there are very few dead spaces. Only towards the end of The Mad Ship did I get a sense of the Robin Hobb who wrote Assassin's Quest and can savagely kill her own momentum. But for the most part, both of these 900-page books felt like 400 pages, and I can't wait to read the third one. I'm saving it for November because there are just too many books that I have to read in October, but I don't know how she's going to tie everything up in 900 pages, and I wish it were longer. So those were my September books. Let me know any highlights from your September or books that you're excited to read in October, and I'll see you soon for either my Home Fire review or my Oedipus Cycle discussion. Tragedy is coming either way. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.